Please be aware this will be a spoiler-filled discussion.
Oh, I'm so excited!
Hello and welcome to the Arts Appreciation Society, where we're ticking all the boxes and providing the much-needed minority perspective in popular internet discourse. I'm Matty, my pronouns are she and her, and I lead the film discussions.
I'm Josh, my pronouns are he and him, and I lead the music discussions.
And today we're talking about surrealist neo-noir drama thriller Enemy. That was stolen directly from Google, by the way, just to show you how many genre asterisks you can apply to
if
this
you were
movie.
drunk at a party and your drunken film friend came up to you and recommended you the film, I 90% guarantee he'd call it Lynchian.
Yeah, you know, it was the surrealist stuff was almost Lynchian for me, and then a spew of word vomit of just different directors and genres that this vaguely relates to comes out as well. You leave the party, you go home, and you fuck your tarantula wife, and you hate yourself for simultaneously not being and being this man.
As a woman, I don't think you can fully appreciate what the film's about, man. This is for the boys. You gotta admit, this is for the boys.
So, if you haven't figured out yet, we're talking about Enemy, Denis Villeneuve's 2013 film, released the same year as his other thriller, co-starring Jake Gyllenhaal, Prisoners. And essentially, the premise of this film is that Jake Gyllenhaal is a mild-mannered history professor in Ontario, Canada, who, through seeing him in a film, discovers that he has a doppelganger that looks exactly like him. However, it's not a simple case of just of just a person that looks exactly like him. And yeah, this one really feels like a film that if I said I was a woman in the message boards of, I would get like a slew of replies about why I can't get this and why it's about like male desire and like.
Dude, it's for the boys. Come on,
it's for the boys. This is ContraPoints' men. It's for her boys.
Yeah. Oh man.
Where to begin?
Such a crazy film.
It's such a crazy movie.
Honestly, this one is like Zodiac meets Fight Club. Like in terms of Jake Gyllenhaal was pretty much playing the same character as Zodiac, right? Like super nice, well-meaning guy who's like, well, he's not as nice in this, but you know, kind of a mild-mannered guy who's driven like insane by mystery.
Yeah, that's so true.
But also the Fight Club thing of like, it's about masculinity.
Yeah. So one thing that I'm going to be discussing as well, and kind of using to bring up a discussion of meaning and how we get meaning from films is Chris Stuckman's review of this film, which is also coined an explanation.
Would you say that you got Stuckmanized?
I did get Stuckmanized. I stuck around till the credits, and I heard him say that. So yeah, I guess so. I'm going to talk a little bit about that video just briefly before I do. I want to say I have basically no opinion on Chris Stuckman. I don't think.
Yeah, I want to say that like I think I'm neutral on Chris Stuckman.
Yeah,
I think he's a cool guy. If he ever wanted to come onto the pod, like I'd be happy to have him. Like
totally,
you know. So yeah, I haven't seen his Enemy video.
No, I've seen like basically none of his videos, apart from the one about the KFC, whatever one it is. Yeah, I have no. This isn't like any because I think a lot of people have an opinion on Chris Stuckman, and I really don't.
He is like the Jeremy Jahns of slightly more indie films.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like what Jeremy Jahns is the superhero. Like Jeremy Jahns is like the Angry Joe superhero films.
Yeah,
and Chris Stuckman is the Jeremy Jahns of slightly more indie films.
I agree.
If that makes sense. If that makes sense to you, you're probably a degenerate
or a genius. Who decides? Kalikala. In this review, he at the beginning lays out a framework for analyzing this specific film that I personally found quite problematic. He basically says like, there are elements of this film. No, sorry. A lot of the time with films, I will say there are elements that are up to interpretation. However, in this film, there are interpretations that are correct and incorrect. And here is why my point of view is correct. And then
it's not a Nolan
rest,
film, though.
Bro.
I always disagree with this interpretation is right, but certain for example, a Nolan film, you can genuinely misunderstand the explanation of how, say, space travel works in Interstellar. Like, you can genuinely mishear that monologue and just like have a wrong idea about what happened at the end.
But what Chris Stuckman was talking about here was not a literal plot list of plot consequences. It was you can misinterpret symbolism, and you can like get the film's meaning wrong, which I wrestle with, like, I guess postmodernism myself, but I think ultimately I would say that like there is, you can't pronounce a one truth on a piece of art. That doesn't work. So I was like, that's really weird. And then he proceeded to go through the film, describe every scene in detail, and just say the most, like, I'm not gonna lie, the most obvious, like, literal interpretation of the film events possible. Okay. So like it was a I'm gonna say it was a bad video because I watched the film the night before. The film was very fresh in my memory, and I think in this, the Enemy is the kind of film that when a scene happens, you need to go into your head and go, okay, in the film's language, what just happened here past the literal? Okay. And so all this video was that. It was like rewatching the film with then Chris Stuckman telling me his opinion for the last 2 minutes.
Well, before you give me his thesis, could I, as the person who didn't see any theorization videos on this, could I say like what the film hit me as being about? And I'm just really curious as to how close I am to Chris Stuckman's thesis.
Yeah, I love this framing. Let's go for it.
My experience with this film, watching it, is it opens with mysterious Jake Gyllenhaal walking into a room with a pregnant woman masturbating with men watching her, and then like a woman bringing out like a spider in a food tray, and then it's really this is a very specific fetish that Denis Villeneuve is delving into, and then the high-heeled woman steps on the spider, and that's how it starts, and eventually you get like these shots of like giant airy spider walking over are they in New York? Are they in California, right?
It's Ontario, Canada.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah.
Walking over Ontario, Canada. Let's pretend I knew that. So I genuinely, I was like, okay, this is a Denis film. I think it's gonna be like Arrival or Blade Runner. There's gonna be like some sort of sci-fi kind of happening here. So I knew nothing about this film other than that it had like a doppelganger. So I really thought like, okay, I can't wait for them to tell us.
There's going to be some grand explanation.
Yeah, the spider thing. And then when it gets to the end, and he the ending of this film, which has excited and confounded the internet, is after switching girlfriends with his doppelganger through a series of events and sleeping with the pregnant woman, the doppelganger's wife, he goes into the bedroom and she is now a spider.
Ginormous
it's fucking horrifying.
It is actually it's horrible. I'm thinking about it right now, and I'm like looking behind.
Horrible.
It's not there.
And so and then the film just fucking ends. And
sighs and it ends.
Yeah,
he gives a sigh of like resignation, and like, that's it.
I hate it when my pregnant girlfriend becomes a spider.
I'm gonna be honest, I really like that ending.
It is one of my favorite film endings.
Brilliant ending.
Recent day. But yeah, so and then because it ended like that, I was like, okay, so this wasn't like an Arrival style film. Let me go. Clearly, it's something more symbolic than sci-fi, right? So let me go back to the opening scene and try to figure out And it kind of so the opening scene, watch it again. I was trying to like draw connections of what happened at the end, and you have the thing of like the male, the guy who works at his apartment, who helps him get back into his house when he's trapped out.
Yeah.
Mistakes him for let's call the Professor Gyllenhaal and then Biker Gyllenhaal. Biker Gyllenhaal is the doppelganger, who's the antagonist of the film, I guess.
He is the enemy. Yeah.
Yep. And Professor Gyllenhaal is the our protagonist who is trying to break into Biker Gyllenhaal's house, right? And the person working in the apartment who helps him break in recognized him as Biker Gyllenhaal, and he's like, "Hey man, I love that place you took me to the other night. It was pretty wild. We gotta go there again sometime." And then you go back and watch the first scene, and it's like the same guy doing the same walk to that room, and it's like, oh shit, this is the place he's talking about. And then it's a bunch of men watching a pregnant woman masturbating, and then a woman bringing out a spider. And I was like, okay, so this is never actually explained. Clearly, this is like some David Lynch dream logic shit. Like, this is all symbolic. And then what I took it to be about was, this is about men fearing commitment and intimacy. And that's what spiders seem to represent to me. So yeah, this whole film is an allegorical tale about the male fear of commitment and intimacy. That is what I took away from the film.
Okay.
And I want to hear how far off base it was from the definitive Chris Stuckman reading of the film.
Dude, you're bang on. You're bang on. This is exactly what our Lord and Savior Chris said the film to be.
Nice.
You got Stuckmanized, or Stuckman got collubered, apparently. So I think, I don't know. I do this interpretation feel. I see what Chris Stuckman is saying to a certain extent. The film is quite explicitly about something, and I think the male characters seem to. There's a lot of discussion about history in this film. Jake Gyllenhaal in a history lecture specifically cites Hegel and says that history happens twice, and that all of this is a cycle. And so obviously the film structure being that history Gyllenhaal seems to replace biker Gyllenhaal, and in seeking to defeat biker Gyllenhaal, he becomes him and absorbs his own desires, because biker Gyllenhaal is far more like masculine and commanding. He's
Tyler Durden.
Yeah, he's Tyler Durden. He's Tyler Durden, and like sexually driven as well. Whereas previous to his encounters with biker Gyllenhaal, history Gyllenhaal seems very content despite the repetitive nature of his life. And so yeah, it's all about cycles and history, and that's the kind of thing that Chris Stuckman talks about. However, I feel like what he left, I feel like what he is denying is, I think, the room that it leaves, the room that this film's symbolism leads for into interpretation. Because I'm not saying, this isn't me about to say that this film is entirely like misogynistic or anything like that, but I just feel like it's something that's left unexplored. So using women, because I feel like the spiders are women in this film. I mean, fucking hell. I mean,
the ending, the wife
into one at the end. Yeah.
And the woman presents him with a spider. Yeah.
And I think like the first part of talking about a film is deciding what the film's saying. The second part of that, and the most important part, is then going, okay, what do I think about that? Because I can watch a film and figure out what it's trying to say anywhere. I watch a review because I want to know what you think about that. And that's what I found so frustrating about that video, is because, and so frustrating about all of those videos, it's like, they're useful, say, if you didn't get the point of the film, but what you then should do, if you really want to, if you're not bothered, who fucking cares? But if you're making a review and an analysis, you need to say what you think about that and what the implications of that are. And I think that's what I want to do in this discussion is, well then, if Denis Villeneuve, as he said in interviews, considers this exploration of him and Gyllenhaal's subconscious, what does that mean about them as people? On first thought, some quite troubling implications. Obviously, there's some heightening that's being done for the story, but at the same time, making a film is a series of choices. Making art is a series of choices, and it's far more interesting to talk about why people made those choices than just to decipher the existence of those choices in the first place.
Yeah, man, to compare this, I genuinely do think David Lynch and David Fincher are big reference points for this film.
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
interviews. This really feels like Denis doing a shot at making a Fincher film. It really feels like Zodiac and Fight Club, and I enjoyed the ride of this film.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, I tried so hard to come up with like, how can I come up with an interpretation that isn't just women are scary spiders and I don't want to commit? And I was thinking about Mulholland Drive, the David Lynch film, and that film has a similar narrative structure where there's like weird stuff with like people taking on other people's identities and names moving around, similar to how Jake Gyllenhaal takes on another person's identity and is treated as if he's that person, in a surrealist way. And in that film, have you seen Mulholland Drive?
No.
Well, to not spoil it, the film messes around with like weird dream stuff, both like on a more literal level than you'd think. Where like a character literally goes to sleep, and then you're like, oh wait, now I'm questioning how much of the film was actually her dreaming in her subconscious.
Yeah.
I'm like questioning the chronology of what I'm watching. Which part was the dream, which part was reality. And I was trying to apply that type of storytelling to this film. So the interpretation I was trying to reach that was maybe a bit more sympathetic was maybe like Professor Gyllenhaal is a presentation of future Gyllenhaal, right? And Biker Gyllenhaal is young Gyllenhaal, yeah?
Interesting.
And my main piece of evidence to support this is at the beginning, when he thinks he's seeing himself in the film, he goes to his box and pulls out a photograph of a ripped up picture of him and a woman over his arm over him, which implies that in the past he took a picture with a woman who had her arm over him. And then later on, when he's at Biker Gyllenhaal's house, he sees that he has framed that exact same photograph, but it's not ripped up yet, implying that a breakup happened, and then he ripped it up and kept his half of the photo. So I was like, oh, whoa. So maybe actually Biker Gyllenhaal is a presentation of young version of him, Professor's old version of him. And he's kind of trapped in this repetitive, like loveless kind of relationship with a woman who there's a very weird fucked vibes kind of relationship with that woman. And he's reflecting on, his fear to commit to his pregnant wife and wishing. And we're actually seeing two sides of his masculinity, like the kind of maybe the more rager, chauvinistic side that fucked the relationship up, and then kind of this maybe quote unquote sensitive side that is like reflecting and regretting, right? This still doesn't solve the problem. This is a radical interpretation. It still doesn't solve the problem of like spiders as symbolism for women, and like when I think of spiders, I think about like trapping, like webs and trickery.
And there's a lot of imagery in that film as well, in this film.
And it also doesn't totally pair up with the whole subplot of Biker Gyllenhaal taking the new girlfriend and being really mean to her. Maybe it's like his old gross self is always going to pervade his new relationships, and like as he's trying to reconcile with this divorce that I'm arguing happened in my weird Mulholland Drive reading. It still doesn't reconcile the weird spider imagery. But that was my attempt at charitable reading.
I think, this might be bold. I don't know. So, I think on the face of it, portraying women as spiders that fuck and eat their partners is probably bad. But there's something in this film that feels quite sympathetic to that plight. There's a particular. I want to reference a couple of things for this. okay, so when he walks into that room, the spider isn't. The spider's fucking terrifying, right? Because it's a massive spider and it looks
but
really
it
good.
moves like
But
a
it
woman.
shrieks and moves away.
Yeah, like
And
someone's scared of
there's
being seen naked.
exactly, and also, but also
I
like,
hate that so much.
dude, it's hot. But also, there is something even scarier about does that because it kind of makes it seem more alive. But still, on
I'm
a
so
like
scared.
more metaphorical level, it makes it feel like there is like it's in fear, and
Yeah.
there's something in that about how something much greater seems in more fear, but also at the same time I feel like the conclusion of this story here is that, I know it sounds so stupid, but I think the conclusion of the story here is that Jake Gyllenhaal gets eaten, because I mean that is
Interesting.
that's what spiders do. They mate with their female spiders mate. They
Yeah.
get their eggs and then they eat their partner.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying
Famously,
that it's like some grand like
spider
tale of
moment.
a some grand tale of like a woman eating her partner, but I think there is sympathy. I personally I have some problems with it in Blade Runner. I really like the way Denis Villeneuve casts women in films like Sicario and this one, and I think he poses what
Arrival
he
as well.
what he
Amy
does.
Adams in that
Yeah,
film's amazing.
what he does really well is pose impossible moral questions that make you very uncomfortable to think about. In Sicario, he does this really well by giving you this concept of justice that is achieved in really bad, objectively bad and cruel ways, but also justice has been done, and that knowledge sits so uncomfortably. And there's like, with this film, there is this feeling of inevitability in its events, like this magnetism between both Gyllenhaals towards each other, but also they go from meeting in the middle to each other and then continuing and traveling towards their wives.
Yeah.
And there's something, I think, quite, to go back to what I was saying about women, quite empathetic towards the women in that, because yeah, you could say something about the fact that they're posed as victims, but I think ultimately, like, there is showing something as a victim, there is some level of sympathy there, and also, the beginning of this film shows a spider being crushed. Like, there is, I think,
By a high heel.
by a high heel, exactly, but also simultaneously for everyone else's enjoyment. And also, the other thing I would reference is how reasonable Biker Gyllenhaal's wife is. She is like, I was really glad to see that she's never presented as shrill. Her realization, she has so much autonomy in choosing to sleep with History Gyllenhaal. She figures out what's going on completely independently of them, and makes her decision. And I think that was really cool. But yeah, like you said, this is one for the boys. This is one for the fellas.
Well, I like what you said about the way the spider moves, because to bring back my arcane Mulholland Drive reading of the film, if you are to think of this as someone reflecting on how their toxic masculine behavior, their Tyler Durden, their biker Gyllenhaal, hurt their relationship, then the spider kind of can symbolize a fear of commitment, turning this woman into this horrifying thing that will tie you up in cobwebs and eat you, and you're no longer, you'll be, I don't know, the internet uses the word simp to describe men who care about a woman, and you'll be turned into a simp, and but I think at that moment where the spider shrinks into the corner, you think about sympathy, right? And it feels really, it feels like she's scared of him. And you think about how fucking scary Biker Gyllenhaal is in that car scene when he's screaming. It's pretty on the nose. He's screaming, "What? You don't think I'm a man? You don't think I'm a fucking man?" Implies that, even though this character is afraid of intimacy and kind of has demonized the women in his life, right, at the end of the day, the relationship was screwed up because of him being scarier than he thinks he's capable of.
Yeah.
And I think it's this interesting idea of like the dual sides of being a man, of like viewing yourself as some sensitive soft boy, but to the people in your life
Yeah.
you can be viewed as more aggressive or scary, but you don't actually understand how you can come off as, you don't understand that you're coming off as aggressive or scary.
Yeah.
You know, I
Uh,
think people who are abusers in relationships often don't see themselves as abusers, and maybe that's what this is trying to touch on.
I completely agree. I think you've really hit the nail on the head. I think there is such a sense of fragility, uh, or self-perceived fragility on the male counterpart. And so I think that ridiculous image of this gigantic spider being so terrified of sheerly just the image of Jake Gyllenhaal is really powerful in the end, because I think the fact that she is not as terrified of Gyllenhaal as she is in human form, but
Hmm.
she is more terrified when she is in her true powerful form, shows that all of this fear and this anger that comes from the evil Jake Gyllenhaal comes from seeing her as a threat to
Yeah,
him. And
yeah.
so when she sees that the previously good Gyllenhaal has seen her now as she truly is, she is the spider is terrified of what he
Hmm.
might do because of how that affects him. And I think
Hmm.
that is genuinely a really nuanced and accurate portrait of how men's fragility causes abuse on their part. Because, yeah, it's about fear of who they might truly be and fear of being rejected. Like the moment that good Gyllenhaal's girlfriend realizes that it's not actually him because she notices like where the wedding ring mark was. He instantly becomes aggressive and things like that. So yeah, I think there's some really good stuff in here. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with the resolution that the film comes to be honest.
Yeah, it sucks. You have to do so much more work to
Yeah.
like make it not just women scary spiders.
Yeah.
But I do think it is presented in a nuanced enough way that you can get there, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
And like we've said with our Malcolm and Marie stuff, like filmmakers, like Denis Villeneuve is a man,
Mm,
and you know things like that. But I will argue if the director seems like they're making it in good faith, that filmmakers should be allowed to take risks in how they frame things, because that's when you get the most
mm.
interesting stuff. Because
I
I, I feel like solving this film's apparent problems in representation makes more interesting statements than just something that portrays an inherently good message on its surface level.
Yeah, and I think it's really exciting and interesting when men make films about how men look at women, because
Yeah,
that's a man reflecting on their relationship with gender. Like that is
that is
interesting.
unabashedly good. Like,
Yeah, like that's cool. If you're doing it well, it's super cool. Like
yeah.
I don't think men shouldn't be allowed to write about. Because then what? Then the only films men can make is like Hob and Shaw, where there's just no.
Well,
Because you're
yeah,
not allowed to write women
exactly.
anymore. I don't know. That's just. I'm
You
not.
have the opposite
Yeah.
problem. You have the opposite problem where it's like then men wouldn't write women, and that's bad. And yeah, like I said, I think men writing about how shitty and making films about how shitty men can be, and showing that to other men, because I think that's really good,
Yeah.
and like brings that message to film watchers who might not get that message from other people and things like
Mm.
that. I think now that we've talked quite a lot about this film's like messaging and meaning, things like that, I think it'd be a good time to just talk about how it looks and how it presents all of this, because I think it's stellar. I think I was actually really quite concerned about the yellow of this film before I watched it, but this is a film that feels like the world ends with this city because of how unique it looks. Like, if you just have this constant sense of time and, well, maybe not time, this constant sense of place that makes this problem and this crisis so like present and terrifying. And yes, that yellow and is so key in creating the world of this film, because it just feels so unfriendly and alien, and
It's like it's nauseating and sick.
yeah, it really is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It really is uncomfortable. And you just don't see a lot of other humans' faces in this film. The human faces that you see the most of are our characters. All of the extras are completely in the background. And like it's so troubling. Like it's such a hostile world.
Yeah. Unironically,
I
it reminds
really
me of
hate it.
Nolan's use of color grading in Batman Begins, the sickly yellow of that film as well. It's,
That's so
uh,
true. That's so
I'm not
true.
going anywhere with this.
No, I'm glad you pointed that out there. Like, but yeah, I just think that I don't know. I can't imagine this film having a more grounded style to it. I'm so happy that this is such a like deeply unsettling place to be in while you watch this film, because there really is no, while I said that the beginning of his life doesn't seem too bad, there really is no refuge from the like really troubling implications of this film's story.
Yeah.
Like this film is bad vibes in its message and it's bad vibes in its feeling.
Yeah.
It's great.
And if you take my interpretation that the film is about Professor Gyllenhaal reflecting on failing this marriage, then yeah, the beginning of life is pretty bad because he's like a divorced husband in a loveless relationship, reenacting the same shittiness. Like even though he views himself as a sympathetic, likable person, and as such is presented as that. You still get like scenes like when his girlfriend goes to bed and then he kind of goes to bed and just starts having sex with her, and then she stops him because he never asks for consent. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
hints of that aggressive, chauvinistic biker dude still already in him, even though he doesn't view himself that way. So I like thinking of the film as being told out of chronological order in that way, because it kind of explains why he's presented that way at the beginning.
I think that's really true. I honestly didn't think much about this chronology of this film storytelling. Is there anything else about that? Because I honestly find it like fascinating, because I just
Yeah.
love piecing this film together.
It reminded me of there's a specific type of time travel story where you can travel back in time, but you don't take your body with you, but you go back to like the consciousness. Okay, so it's a Life is Strange time travel. Where in Life is Strange, when she time travels, she goes back to the consciousness of the body at that moment.
Okay.
So she's returning to the same body but with new knowledge. Right?
Yeah.
If you think of this as a complete psychological in his head exploration of the memory of this failed marriage and trying to reconcile with this chauvinistic masculinity side of him that broke this marriage, toxic masculinity, then moments like when he comes home and is usually Biker Gyllenhaal is quite dismissive, and maybe this is a presentation of like what he was actually like in those moments. But when he comes home as Professor Gyllenhaal and he sees her pregnant in the bed and he tenderly walks to her and feels awkward and starts crying, it's kind of like that feels like it's almost as if he's like time traveled back to that memory, but now with the added resonance of like knowing that he fucked it up, and how he gets to like, if he could live that moment again, he would have been so much more like appreciative or in touch with his feelings, or so that's what I mean by like chronology. Like it feels like it's about a memory and reconciling with this kind of failed relationship, and that's why she's so like she's presented as like taken aback when he's so like tender in that moment, because he's kind of remembering things. It's like when you look back at a failed relationship, I'm trying to think, if I knew that I was gonna fuck up in that way, I would have gone back and I would have been more present and things like that.
Yeah. Wow. I really like. That's another one of those. Guess moral 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 posturings that's like really just difficult to deal with, just in terms of like can I improve? Like, who are we really? I think there's so if this film is so about the director's subconscious, there's this really deep feeling of like this is just who we inherently are, and like kind of like that magnetism I was talking about. Yeah, it's like this. There is no escape from this. This is who we are, and like
Yeah.
it's just such a horrible position in
Yeah.
every regard.
Yeah, again, it really does remind me of Fight Club and the conflict for me by Mike and Gyllenhaal and Professor Gyllenhaal really feel like Tyler Durden and narrator in Fight Club, and that conclusion of like, can I kill this toxic part of myself and survive? And it's hard work. Your face is going to be bloody and disgusting afterwards. But that film has pretty optimistic ending that yeah, he can escape this. You can grow as a person.
Yeah, Fight Club has
And
such a good vibes ending. I
yeah,
love it.
and yeah, I agree. I love art about self-hatred and like, can I still like myself after the things I've done? I played Last of Us
Yeah.
2 recently, and that has similar themes of kind of like, there's literally a scene in that game where a character like looks at one of the protagonists and says, Abby, actually, when you're playing as Abby, and they're just like, you're a shitty person, like you're a fucking horrible person, and Abby's like, oh man, I really, I really can't argue with that. Like, I don't know how to, but you still have to play for another 10 hours and kind of redeem yourself. And the idea that like in life, you're gonna fuck up and be shitty, and like men especially, you're gonna do some weird chauvinistic shit. But it's up to you to like keep going and improve, and not do like a unapologetic bullshit poser ass kind of actually deal with your demons, and become better. And I think that's powerful as a message.
I think it's really powerful.
Them viewing it as subconscious really works for me. What is the subconscious if not the brain trying to make sense of like traumatic memories?
That's
I like
really
it,
true.
viewing this whole film as Jake Gyllenhaal trying to make, because no one views themselves as Biker Gyllenhaal. Even when you are being a dick to people, you don't think of yourself as a dick. You're always going to think of yourself as a likable protagonist.
Yeah.
For him trying to like
true.
make sense of like, man, why was I such a dick to these women in my life? Like, what the fuck was going on? And framing that as this kind of like antagonistic confrontation of, it's really telling. Like, you get to the scene when they meet each other.
I was just about to bring that up.
Yeah, I was thinking like, if this was real, if this was me, and I met somebody who looked just like me, I'd automatically assume, okay, this is a parent trap situation, my long lost twin. But let's call our parents and figure out what's going on. Like, and if they said no, you don't have a twin, I'm like, okay, you're fucking lying, because there's aliens that exist.
Yeah.
Like, I know this is my twin. Like, but the fact that it's
most
like
logical
such a cosmic horror confrontation, it really feels like trying to confront the darkest aspects of yourself and like reconcile it.
Two things. I fucking love the shot where they reveal alternate Gyllenhaal in the room. He's just peeking around the door, and there's something so natural about it. I love that it's not this grand postured thing. It's just him peeking around the door in a way that any human being naturally would. It's so natural, and it makes it so much more scary. And then secondly, what I love about that scene is, like you said, if this is confronting who he really is, like, can you imagine meeting someone that is exactly you, but they're a dick? Like, more than a dick, like a cosmic piece of shit.
Yeah.
That would really fuck you up, but not just in the way of like, oh, that's scary, but in the way of what implications does this have to say about me? And I love from this point onwards in the plot, this thing that he's been magnetized towards, he just starts running from instantly.
It also,
like, it's been him. He's been pursuing him this whole time. And from this point onwards, he does not want anything else to do with it. And I love that.
It kind of, as a thought experiment, kind of like, if you think about times where you hurt someone or someone was scared of you or you made someone cry, it feels like if you were able to see yourself from their perspective with their emotions and feelings about you, you'd look like, it's very Silent Hill. You'd look like a horrifying monster in a way that it's impossible to view yourself as, because it's you can't see yourself outside of what you're feeling in your perspective. And it kind of feels like when he confronts like dark side of himself, he sees like how gross and manipulative and freaky he can kind of be, and that's like really unsettling.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I think now it's time to get into our recommendations with the film. I'll start off. Actually, Josh, I went first last time. You go first this time.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the tagline of this film is "You can't escape yourself."
And yeah, we've demonstrated how that's what the film's about.
Yeah.
Reconciling with shitty parts of yourself, men trying to come to terms with subconscious prejudice and misogyny and fear of women.
Weird Freudian stuff, the pregnant masturbation, the mother,
The trapping, it's all fucked vibes. The guys, but I think this is for the guys in a good way, and I think the guys can grow and learn from this film, and I loved it. I think it's a great film. I'm gonna give this a strong recommend. Honestly, one of up there. This is up there with Arrival. Arrival's my favorite Denise film, and this is quite possibly my second favorite. I really love this film. So
excellent.
Yeah, strong recommend.
I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I want to give this a strong recommend as well. I think one thing I want to emphasize about this film is just, and it's something that I love about Denis, it's just how fucking watchable they are. They are such a great time from start to finish. Like they have difficult things within them, but I think there's a lot of fun within Gyllenhaal's performance in here. Like I feel like this is such an easy premise to waste, and there is so much going on here with like details of performance and just bad vibes. I'm really in the mood for films right now that are just fucking awful. They make you feel like shit to watch. But at the same time, that's really gripping, and you can really sink your teeth into it. It just offers up so much, and it's so rich, and it means that you can really take a load off while you watch this. I'm not even lying. Like, this is bad vibes, but honestly, I was pretty chill while I watched this. Like,
it's just a great thriller, isn't it?
It's just great. Like, it's honestly great. And I think one thing is I've been slightly worried about, because I really loved some of Denis' films. But I think one thing that he's come close to, especially in a film like Prisoners, is like Fincher worship and just doing the Fincher stuff without really being as good and having such good stories behind it.
Prisoners wants so badly to be 7.
It really wants to be 7, and it just isn't. And like, I really love that film's off. Like, but it just doesn't need to be as long as it is. But anyway, it was really nice to have my fears like lessened, because he is a great filmmaker, and Dune might be boring, but he used to make really, no, I'm joking. He makes really entertaining and thrilling films, and I'd give this a strong recommend.
Yeah, I'm happy we got to do this, because like I'm of the personal opinion that he peaked, like in terms of like the trajectory of his career, like he really peaked with Arrival in terms of like the most recent amazing film he did.
Have you seen Sicario yet, by the way?
I haven't seen Sicario yet. That came out before Arrival, right? So I
think it came out afterwards,
Oh wait,
I might be wrong, actually.
No, it came out before, a year before.
Oh, okay, great.
But that was like his peak, like that 2015,
the trajectory,
2016.
Yeah,
in terms of him, like every film is a banger. I really feel like Blade Runner was like aesthetically a real high point. Like seeing that in cinema is so gorgeous, but the writing is poo-poo dog shit. And
yeah, it really is.
And then Dune is I feel like Dune is gonna be that right without the aesthetic like wonder of Blade Runner. I'm just not excited for Dune.
You know when you called The Dark Knight Rises the best made stupid film? I'm slightly worried about that with Dune. Just to provide context to my little Dune comment earlier. But what are we going to be talking about next week, Josh, for our film switcheroo?
Well, Maddie says that she's been enjoying the Fucked Vibes film, and we've covered some real downers recently. So the film I've chosen, in my opinion, is a Fucked Vibes anti-hero film told through the lens of a quirky, fun, charming
it's not
rom-com.
Hancock, is it? Okay, no.
And to kind of just let the lead come out here. I recently had a new golf where I was allured by the luster of Jake Johnson's performance in New Girl.
Where is this going?
He's like, I don't know. It's very good. Anyway, needless to say, watching New Girl, there was this one bit where Zoe Deschanel's character leaves the show and we're left with Megan Fox. And man, I really felt Zoe's like loss and had this moment of
Wow.
like, oh god, do I like Zoe Deschanel now? After years of being trained that she's, you know, kitschy, Starbucks, adorable, you know. I mean, culturally, we are trained to hate white women, and I'm always open to keeping an open mind, to letting people into my heart. You know, Twilight underrated, if I'm honest, and Zoe Chanel, man, really growing on me. So I want to go back. I want to.
It's a terrible film.
So yeah, no. So I was really enjoying Zoe Deschanel, and it made me think about my relationship with Zoe Deschanel in my own life. Yeah, when I was 13 years old, whenever I asked out a girl and got rejected, or you know, had bad relationship moments, the film I always came back to is a Zoe Deschanel classic, 500 Days of Summer, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do next week. We're gonna conclude: is 500 Days of Summer a manic pixie dream girl film, or is it a brilliant subversive critique of the manic pixie dream girl trope and how men view women? So continuing the themes from Enemy, I guess.
You really managed to be so surprising in the ways that you are not at all. It's quite spectacular. So thank you for this. I'm actually genuinely looking forward to that. Even though you're a piece of shit and I don't know why I'm doing a podcast with you. So yeah.
And Zoe, if you're listening, I'm kidding. Anyway, so yeah, that's what we're gonna be doing next week. 500 Days of Summer. So
thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next week to talk about 500 Days of Summer. Apparently, subscribe if you really enjoyed the episode and give us a like. It really helps us out. And our social media is linked down below if you want that up. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.